Is Florida State ready to slow down one of college football's most explosive athletes?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through the 22nd of September, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Today's show is all about Florida State's defense getting better. Priority number one to do that is stopping the containment issues that they had against Georgia Tech and they had last year as well against some mobile quarterbacks. And that really craters all the opportunities in the middle, which Florida State already has plenty of. We talked about that yesterday. If you want to check that out, a very lengthy podcast about the D-line, the front seven, and just poor tackling. Yesterday's pod will help you with that. But this is the expansion of it. Thomas Castellanos in Boston College comes in. They've got experienced running backs, one of which actually played for Florida State at one point. Trayshawn Ward, will talk about him a little bit. They've got a couple of transfer receivers. They got one receiver back that's talented. So if this run game isn't slowed down, Florida State's in trouble. I'm telling you now, do not. I don't care if you think, oh, they'll just come back. Do not sleep on Boston College this weekend. And again, it starts with slowing down and containing Thomas Castellanos. That is priority number one for the Noles. How do they do that? They cannot do what they did against Georgia Tech, first off. Just do the opposite, really. Terrible angles on the edges sometimes. And then just a lack of physicality against Haynes King, not getting low, not powering through guys with your hips. It's a lot of fundamental stuff. That's where it starts. And I can tell you right now, last season, Thomas Castellanos had a lot of success. 305 yards passing. He had 95 yards rushing. He was a guy that got in the end zone. He was clutch. He had a long run around 50 yards on a 3rd and long. He does not think Florida State can stop him. As an additional thing here, just to note, I know Thomas well. Florida State, Clemson, and a bunch of schools wanted him, but they wanted him at running back, DB, receiver, whatever it may be. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to play quarterback. Went to play for Malzahn at UCF, didn't win the jobs, transfers to BC, and here he is. He had a pretty good year last year. Get into his numbers in a second. But he has something on his shoulder, that big chip, about teams that didn't give him a shot to play quarterback. He thinks he can be the guy. He thinks he can be the player that changes games, and he's proven it. And now he has Bill O'Brien, the head coach at BC. That's a different kind of deal. They've got a new offense. I don't know if they're going to try to force too much pro style on him, but he's still a tremendous athlete. And even if it's a drop back pass, Florida State cannot mess around. They cannot allow him to get outside the pocket. They cannot allow him to just run around and do whatever he wants, because he will, even if it's just 1 or 2 extra passes, he will kill you. So let's go over some of his numbers last season just to kind of get a basic game line, if you will, on what he did with the rushing game first, and then we'll go into the passing stats a little bit as well. As far as his rushing stats, he had 4 games over 100, almost went a 5th. That was the Florida State game. But rushing stats in college, always remember this, sacks are taking away from those rushing totals. I hate that stat. They do it right in the NFL, and they take it against the passing totals, but whatever. He had 4 games over 100 yards, had 95 against the Noles. He had 87 yards against Syracuse. That's pretty good. The only game he got really bushwhacked was Pittsburgh, and they have a good pass rush. I'm thinking that had a lot to do with it. BC's O-line was okay at times, and other times not as much. But 17 carries for 21 yards against Pitt. That's the only time Castellanos got slowed down. The game that he really, really got rolling to kind of catch some people's attention was the Army game, 142 yards. But it was the last 2 that really, really put things on high notice for this season. And, of course, the Noles are opening with them. As far as their home opener, it's BC's first game. Miami, 19 carries, 130 yards, 6.8, and a score. And then the SMU game was a bowl game. They won that one 23-14 behind his legs, 21 carries, 156 yards, 7.4, and 2 scores. If that's not enough, he's improved as a passer, I'm sure. He's just, more maturity. but his stats overall are pretty impressive for a guy that runs as much as he did. He threw for 22, 48, 15 touchdowns, did have 14 picks. So he will throw it away some, but not enough. He also completed 57.3%. That'll go up with experience, and they got a better receiving corps. Again, we'll come back to that in segments 2 and 3. But 6.8 yards per pass. I think you're going to see a higher number because he's going to understand more post-snap reads. So if you give him more time to work in the pocket where he steps up, where he slides, that's a problem. And especially, again, with that containment, if he is able to escape and he has nobody in front of him, can throw any level of pass he wants, a bullet, a little arc, or a bomb, that's when you're really in trouble. It is paramount that the strong safety, the nickel, anybody that comes up on a blitz, they break down and try to tackle because you've got one less guy in the defense on the back end. And, of course, even in a four-man rush, whether it's Patrick Payton, it doesn't Jones, whoever it is, they cannot be undisciplined. If I know this sucks and defensive players don't want to look at it this way, it's almost better just to kind of hover there with him because you're not going to out-juke him. This is a freak athlete. This is a guy that could have played running back at Florida State and was actually recruited to play running back at Florida State and Clemson. Several other schools wanted him as well at DB or receiver. He wanted to play quarterback, though, and that's why he's where he is. They have to be very conservative in how they pass rush him. That's hard to do because guys want to hit kill shots. This is not the game to do it. Passing games that were most impressive for him, ironically, Florida State was his best, 305. He had 255 against Georgia Tech, obviously not a great defense last season, but he threw for 265 as well against Louisville, and they got a heck of a pass rush. Gelati, the defensive end's one of the best players in the country. He was up there with Jared Verse and Patrick Payton, all those guys last year. He'll be an NFL player. That's an interesting. He also had 3 touchdowns in that one. He's capable. So the other point besides containment is you got to do something early to get in his head, make him frustrated. He's still a fairly inexperienced quarterback as it relates to the pocket awareness and understanding just throwing it away sometimes. If they're able to get to him early and force some throws that are difficult, you may get a pick 6. You never know. Florida State cannot leave the first quarter with Boston College ahead and or Castellanos having success breaking, contained, running, and or passing. That is really the nutshell. So contain, make him make decisions from the pocket with at least some duress. I don't think they're going to just blitz him on every play. They'll have to mix it up. But if they can keep him in the pocket, the chances of winning the game and doing so convincingly, especially, go significantly up. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about Florida State's ability to not only slow down Castellanos, but the condition here is interesting. Again, Bill O'Brien, new coach. You also have a scenario where you got new receivers, you got new running backs, in conjunction with a guy who used to play at Florida State that's going to be going against the Noles, his old team. That's next here at Locked On Seminoles. Hey, Locked On college football fans and Noles fans. I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do, Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step in the shoes of a head coach and lead a program to victory. Imagine being the head coach of the Florida State Seminoles, just as one example. You can recruit players, hire your staff, and do everything that a program needs to be successful, including handing out the scholarships. You control all the crucial parts of it. And here's what you should really love about this football game. You are responsible for calling plays, too. Talking about the offensive plays that change games. It's your strategy that makes the difference. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, no ads, 100% playable offline, and you go at play on the go as you want. And, of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Seminoles fans. Use the code LOCKEDONCFB, all in caps, inside the store to receive a free boost to your program. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up in the App Store. Download it today. All right. Let's talk about the players around Thomas Castellanos. This is a really interesting scenario for Florida State and every other team that's going to go against it. A little better skill talent for the Noles. Also, a lot of talent that is, shall we say, capable, but necessarily dominant, but with other good players around them, they'll be in single coverage, etc. There's going to be some interesting choices on how Florida State plays the back end going to start with the running backs. And then we'll talk about a couple of interesting receivers. I'm curious how they do this because they've got a really good mix for this season. And I know Castellanos isn't the quote-unquote pocket quarterback that's going to pick you apart, like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. But at the same time, they've got more playmaking skills, more 50-50 ball chances they can make. And the running backs could be impactful in the passing game too. So here are a few of the stats that I have for this group of running backs. And again, Trayshawn Ward, if you don't remember him, 19 to 2022 was a Noles from Plant City, Florida. That kid is a good football player. They got Kyle Rubishaw, 163 carries last year, 780 yards, 4.8 yards per tote, 8 scores. That's pretty good. They also had Trayshawn Ward transfer in from Kansas State. Last year, he was a Wildcat. This is what he did for K-State last season. 124 carries, 643 yards, 5.2 yards per tote, and 5 scores. Ward's always been a consistent player. He's got over 1,800 career yards. That's a good player. And he's going to be motivated to go against at least a few guys that he knows from the Noles during his time in Tallahassee. There's no question. And it's playing in his home state again, the whole 9. So those 2 are important. They also have a couple other guys that are interesting. Alex Broom's a backup guy, 5'6", 190, a power guy for his size, 60 carries, 288, 4.8 yards per carry and a score. And a wild card. It's a kid from Atlanta that was like the Georgia 7A Offensive Player of the Year his last year of high school a few years back. Played at Milton, one of the best programs in the state of Georgia. They actually won state last year. McDonald and his crew did great. He got recruited by a bunch of schools, picked UCF over some SEC schools, ironically. 18 carries for 56 yards, 3.1 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns last year. UCF is loaded at running back. It's kind of a weird deal. They got a bunch of guys there for Gus. So he decides to transfer to Boston College. He's 6'1", 220, 225. That's a load. If he is your 4th running back, you have a very good running back room. Not saying it's as deep as Florida State's, but it's pretty good. This kid was offered by a ton of schools. If I remember right, Florida State might have offered him as well. That's a kid that could be important to this game because with 18 carries and 3 of them going for scores, obviously Gus used him as some short yardage. Maybe he ends up being their short yardage guy. He's their biggest running back for sure. I'm not sure that they want to just pound Ward and Rubishaw into the middle. They're not massive guys, but they're very athletic and have the ability to make guys miss. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. Maybe they use somebody like Jordan McDonald in RPO situations and pass blocking stuff. There's a nice mix of players for them. Looking at the wide receiver group, this is where I was almost shocked, honestly. BC usually has like one really good receiver, and then the next year that guy either comes back or they got to develop something to kind of start over. This year, they brought in guys, but they brought in multiple that I think are good. They have one guy that I think is an upside guy, and they got a returning guy that's a player to watch out for as well. There could be others, but these are the ones that I've researched and found. So here we go. Lewis Bond. This is the guy that I'm concerned about because he's familiar with the program. He's been there last year, 52 catches, 646 yards, 12.4, and 7 scores. All right. They bring in Bradley. He's a kid who came in from Texas Tech. A couple of years ago, he had an even bigger year. He had over 50 catches, but last season, this is a 6'5", 225-pound guy. Big dude. 36 catches, 431 yards. That's not too bad. And 12-yard average, 4 touchdowns. And then they got the shifty guy, another kid that transferred in, Jaden McGowan, 5'8", 185 pounds, 36 catches, 383 yards, 10.6 yards per catch. So he could be your slot that could be elusive. The kid that's coming up that was a freshman, Jaden Skeet, 6'1", 180 pounds, 12 catches for 157 yards, 13.1 in his score last year. He might be one of the key rotational guys. They've got a good blend of size, speed, experience. Telling you, if Florida State does not slow down the rushing attack for BC, there's going to be some serious issues. And to that point here in just a second, I'm going to read a couple comments off my YouTube page based on yesterday's defensive commentary that I gave. Some of these are not very flattering, but they're honest. And I believe since I get a ton of comments on the YouTube page for Locked On Seminoles, so I want to read a few of these out. These are the kind of guys that, while they may not end up being first-round draft picks, collectively they're good. They've got a nice blend. And if you screw around and let Thomas Castellanos have time, whether in the pocket or out, I don't even care really. They're going to make some plays. You can't take them lightly. I know I'm focusing more on the rushing attack today, but I'm telling you, especially adding Bradley, 6'5". Red zone, you got to think he's going to be somebody. We'll talk about tight ends and O-line a little bit more later this week, but BC has that going for them with their size. They got the experience and they got speed. So I'm going to read a couple of different comments here. This is, again, off the Locked On Seminoles page on YouTube. And these are some pretty candid comments. If you want positivity, we are not in the right place. This is just bottom line. I wish it was better, but I respect the honesty from some of the fans, and I like it when people say, I appreciate you being honest. There were some of those in this comment, but anyway, here we go. All those boys cared about was getting their NIL money because it sure didn't look like they had a passion to play football. This is in response to the defensive article I did, or defensive podcast I did yesterday. It's kind of hard to argue in a sense that you can't just think about that. In the NIL era, you would have to think that's part of it. Containing guys like Castellanos and Rubishaw and some of these Bradley, some of these guys, they're not focused, they're not locked in, they'll get exposed. Oh, this is a great one. Pete Thamel said it was the best defensive line in all of college football. Why they pay him is beyond belief. Pete doesn't look good on that one. Pete Thamel's a pretty good insider, but that's what he was told, and he passed that around. I'm sure many of you heard that. That's from 23 Tales 15. Look, I don't know. The Florida State's D-line wasn't anything but bad, so they certainly weren't the best team in college football up front. Another one from John Friday. Offensive play calling was lifeless. No adjustments after half. That might be a little bit harsh, but I'm going to do something on that exact topic later this week. It's certainly not one that is very friendly, but there were some concerns about the play calling with DJU that we talked a little bit about in a couple podcasts back, but I'll come back around to that later this week after I get some more info. This comes from Alex Garcia. I have a bad feeling about the team this year. Mike Norvell is too loyal to his coaches. The positional coaches let him down against Georgia Tech. That one I'm curious if anybody wants to comment on. Some of that is just overall, but I think a lot of it was talking about the defense and their inability to tackle well, not being very fundamentally sound. So, it is what it is. All right. This is user 4SN. They had no heart, poor play calling. I blame the coaches on offense and defense. DJ needs to learn how to throw the ball. It's like he was at Clemson and Oregon State, hit and miss. That's a guy that's really angry. Here's another one. Oh, boy. Odell Higgins needs to retire. His technique is not working for players. Shannon, linebackers don't hit gaps either. I don't know about retiring Odell Higgins, but it's not like they did well with some of the stuff going on in the gap protection and the tackling. One simple, basic pod from Mr. Chocolate here. They were outcoached. Well, it's kind of hard to argue that. Georgia Tech won that handedly. From Kyle Goodwin. Norvell is a good coach, not an elite coach, and will not win a natty with Florida State. Okay. So you get a wide variety of thoughts here on the podcast and all the things that kind of came in to Locked On Seminoles. It kind of accent what I'm talking about. There's a lot of frustration. So with that frustration, to wrap up everything, I'm going to talk about what Florida State needs to do, and at least one option that I think they should we say, not embellish on, but at least consider, and that's that all positions on defense, we're just talking defense today, are basically open to negotiation, playing time, whether you start, etc. I think that's something that you have to do, because if you don't, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a big problem. And I'm not really sure that you can do anything to make it go better, because playing the same guys doesn't take into account, hey, you played terrible, we're just going to let you go back out there. I think players have to be held accountable, and Norvell and his staff have to be like, look, you have to be able to play better this week in practice, so there could be changes. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. 5 Hour Energy is the brand that hard-working people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling that they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store anywhere in the United States. Stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energy-saving 5 Hour Energy shots. If you need to get them online, you can go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com and get 5 Hour Energy products today. You can use promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's all capital letters to receive $20 off your order. This is valid only through the 30th of September for one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. The show is also brought to you by Ibotta. Make sure you check out Ibotta. It is the new app that you can get all kinds of different opportunities with. Check out Ibotta today. Ibotta is something you can go to a basic grocery store. It is something you can use as an app if you want to go in and get retail clothes. It is something that you can use if you go into all kinds of retail places to save money. You can take this as a dream vacation opportunity without dreading the cost. With Ibotta, you get the cash back on all of your purchases. All you need to do is spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that gets you cash whenever you shop. Keep that in mind. Ibotta users save $250 a year. That's quite a bit. You could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip if you use Ibotta. Something like a flight, something like a shopping spree, whatever you want. That's a lot of money you can save. You can use it on over 2,400 brands and over 1,000 retailers. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 off for trying Ibotta. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. So should Florida State completely drop out of this concept of, okay, we're settled with our depth chart, etc.? Well, I don't know if they should completely go. Maybe they should just start all over, but they at least, this is my point, they at least got to consider kind of opening it back up at all the defensive spots. I don't see how you can. Florida State's not in a good spot defensively. We talked at length about the defense up front yesterday, a little bit with the linebackers, but I just think from a competition standpoint, they got to hit more. I talked about that. They got to do it. And all of it goes into the point with Castellanos and these guys. If somebody shows this week in practice that was running with the second team, that they're more competitive, they're more aggressive, yet they still listen and they'll break down and tackle, why would you not consider them an option? I think that's the most important thing. You got to give guys that are not starters a shot this week. Part of that is team morale. Like, we didn't play well. These guys are ahead of me. Why am I not getting my shot? In today's era, especially, fair or not, that's something that's going to be discussed privately amongst players. I guarantee it. Guys that are backups, if they don't get a shot this week, things can go south with your locker room. This is not just Florida State. This is anybody. Some of the other guys, doesn't be a younger player, just any backup. If they don't get a shot this week, it could cause some issues. Here are the things that I would look for. This is just my opinion. Take it however you want. The best tacklers play. After a lack, let's say, of fundamentals with their ability to tackle and their lack of ability to hammer it home, how many big plays did they have? DJ Lundy had the one tackle for loss where they just looked sound. They didn't have many of those. How many plays did they have where a guy just powered through and got an extra 2 yards too? So it goes both ways, and they're both bad. They didn't drive guys back. They didn't go through players. They didn't tackle consistently, and they were often pushed back after contact. The best tacklers, in my opinion, should play. Of course, number two, assignment correct. They didn't have necessarily terrible assignments. It's just they didn't execute it well. Like one step here or there in terms of filling the goal or filling the hole from the inside linebacker. It doesn't sound like much, but one step in football is a very significant difference. The guys that get outside the edge, that's also a problem with steps. But some of that was just like they didn't break down and they weren't ready for Haynes King, which shocks me. And he is fast and athletic. He deserves a lot of credit. Castellanos is more explosive. So those kind of things are important. They got to be assignment correct and be ready to tackle. Third, the leverage concept that I was just talking about. This isn't just with stopping Castellanos outside. Leverage inside too. The body posture, playing high, not coming off the snap fast. I mean, those are things that are difficult to understand. If you don't play outside with leverage, you're in trouble. And then finally, when in question, if you're going to make a mistake, make it going 100 miles an hour. Too much indecisive play last week. So anybody this week in practice, for me, that is decisive, that shows some seriousness about taking the game plan the way the coaches want, executing it the way the coaches want. I don't care what jersey number they have. I don't care their stature in terms of what year they are. I don't care how many sacks they had last season. The players this week in practice that earn it are the ones that play the most reps. How they do that in terms of a full-on depth chart, I have no idea. They released a depth chart last week for the BC game, and they were all excited. Norvell, I think, is shocked as anybody, by the way, because he was fired up at his press conference, the meeting he did with the Florida State media team, and they went to that restaurant, all that. I don't think they're going to be very excited to hand out anything this week. And I also don't think they should hand out a depth chart because I don't think there is one. I think they're developing it. This is an extension in all practical purposes of fall camp. That's what this week's practice. And again, they're lucky they don't play it on Monday. They got a little extra time after the long trip to Ireland. They're lucky because that game gives them an opportunity to play not only a team with some athletes, but play a team with athletes that have nothing to lose. Like nobody's going to pick BC hardly, except for some BC folks probably, or maybe some Miami fans. So they better be ready, and that extra couple of days should serve them well. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to talk more about the offensive line, the tight ends, some other things with relation to Florida State's ability to play defense. And then we're going to start breaking down what Florida State needs to do offense too. That's going to be tomorrow on Locked On Seminoles. Make sure that you check out Locked On Seminoles each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to see everything that's going on with Florida State football. This is a fun community, and I love doing it. Come back and see us tomorrow. And after this, check out Locked On College Football, all the insights from Spencer McLaughlin, what's going on with NIL, what's going on with the big games, all the stuff off the field, including the Grant and Wright stuff with Florida State. That's at Locked On College Football. Everybody have a good one, and I will see you on Wednesday.